The Beaumont estate was the kind of place that made you feel small. Towering glass windows, marble floors that echoed with every footstep, and chandeliers that looked like they belonged in royal palaces. It was a house where everything sparkled, except joy. Charles Beaumont, the man who built this empire, was a tech mogul whose name opened doors around the world. He was the face of innovation, a self-made billionaire with a reputation for fixing anything with a problem, except for one thing. His son. Ethan Beaumont was born into this world with a heart full of curiosity but a voice trapped in silence. From the moment he opened his eyes, he hadn't spoken a single word. Doctors called it selective mutism at first, then moved on to rare neurological terms. Therapists were rotated like chess pieces, every possible treatment explored. But nothing worked. Ethan remained silent. For Charles, it was the only problem in his life he couldn't buy a solution for. Maria Hernandez didn't belong in a house like this, or at least that's what people said. A single mother of two, she came from a working-class neighborhood on the other side of Westbridge. To her, jobs were not opportunities, they were survival. When she was offered a housekeeping position at the Beaumont estate, she didn't hesitate. She had no idea what world she was stepping into. Maria was warm, unfiltered, and had an innate kindness that wasn't trained, it was lived. Every morning she entered that grand house humming soft Spanish tunes. It wasn't professionalism. It was her way of keeping her own heart alive amidst marble coldness. She noticed Ethan on her first day, quiet, sitting by the window, watching the world but never engaging. She didn't push. She didn't kneel down and speak in that overly sweet voice others used with him. She simply smiled, nodded, and continued dusting. To Ethan, Maria wasn't another adult trying to fix him. She was different. Over the weeks, Maria and Ethan's paths crossed more often. She never demanded his attention, yet Ethan found himself trailing behind her while she worked. She'd tell him stories, not therapy stories, but real, funny ones. Stories about her son Diego, who once tried to clean the fish tank with dish soap, turning it into a foamy disaster. Ethan didn't speak. But he listened. His eyes would crinkle with silent laughter, and Maria noticed. She began to include him more. Folding laundry together, dusting bookshelves side by side, humming silly tunes while sorting silverware. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't a program. It was human connection in its rawest form. Maria didn't know it, but she was doing something none of the doctors had ever done, she was making Ethan feel normal. One rainy afternoon, with thunder grumbling in the distance, the house was unusually still. Charles had left for Zurich, and the staff were busy in other parts of the mansion. Maria was in the kitchen, attempting to reach a set of porcelain teacups perched on a high shelf, teacups she referred to as the fancy ones no one uses. She dragged over a rickety stool, balanced herself, and began singing a playful, made-up song about falling teapots and mischievous biscuits. Ethan had followed her into the kitchen, unseen, and stood at the doorway, watching. Maria wobbled dangerously on the stool. She flailed her arms in an exaggerated pantomime, half laughing at her own clumsiness. That's when it happened. A sound. Soft. Unfamiliar. Ethan giggled. At first, Maria thought she imagined it. But then came another giggle, louder, brighter. Ethan's laughter filled the air, unrestrained and beautiful. Maria froze, one teacup in hand, staring at him with wide eyes. Ethan laughed harder, pointing at her shaky balancing act. It was the first sound anyone had heard from him. And it wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a word. It was laughter, pure, uncontrollable joy. Unbeknownst to them, Charles Beaumont had just returned home early. The moment he stepped through the door, he heard it, a child's laughter echoing through his marble halls. He ran towards the sound, heart pounding. His life had been filled with boardrooms and algorithms, but in that moment, he was just a father chasing the most beautiful noise he had ever heard. He rushed into the kitchen, and froze. There was his son, laughing hysterically, face glowing with a happiness Charles had never seen. And there was Maria, standing on a wobbly stool, looking just as stunned. For a moment, time paused. Charles didn't know what to say. He had spent millions on experts, flown to 5 countries seeking answers. And yet, it was the housemaid, balancing precariously on a stool, singing about biscuits, who had reached his son. That evening, Charles sat with Maria in the sunroom, something he had never done with any of his staff. Maria, humble and a bit nervous, told him everything. How she had simply treated Ethan as a boy, not a patient. How she never forced him to speak, but always made him feel included. Her words hit Charles harder than any business negotiation ever had. All this time, I was trying to fix him, Charles said quietly. But he didn't need fixing. He needed someone to just see him. Maria smiled softly. He has a lot to say, sir. He's just been waiting for someone who listens with more than their ears. That night, Charles didn't go to his office. He didn't check emails. He sat with Ethan, reading stories, playing card games. For the first time, they were just father and son. The days that followed were filled with small miracles. Ethan's laughter became a daily melody. Then came whispers, cautious words. Maria would bring Diego over, and the 2 boys would play, their bond growing effortlessly. Ethan's first full sentence wasn't scripted in a therapy room. It happened casually, as he and Maria were baking cookies. Maria's funny. The words were simple, but to Charles, they were everything. He wept in his office, not out of sadness, but out of overwhelming gratitude. Years passed, but the memory of that rainy afternoon remained vivid. Charles transformed, not just as a father, but as a man. Inspired by Maria's impact, he launched a foundation named the Invisible Heroes Initiative, dedicated to supporting caregivers, janitors, housemaids, and unsung everyday heroes who often held more wisdom than textbooks. At its inaugural gala, Charles took the stage, not as a billionaire, but as a grateful father. He shared Ethan's story, not as a case study, but as a reminder that true connection doesn't come with a price tag, it comes with kindness. Ethan, now a confident teenager, introduced Maria that night as his best friend in the whole world. Maria, ever modest, scolded him playfully, causing the audience to burst into laughter. The world remembered Charles Beaumont not for his fortune, but for a story. A story of a silent boy, a singing maid, and a laugh that shattered the walls of silence. And in the end, it wasn't advanced algorithms or high-priced specialists that reached Ethan. It was kindness. Simple. Human. Powerful. Sometimes, the greatest miracles happen when we stop trying to fix people, and simply start seeing them.